Please welcome Roxy Butnar. Roxy.
Testing, testing. Good. Thank you, Tom. Hey, everybody, and thank you, Tom, for such kind words. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to work alongside him and all of our clients. My name is Roxy Butnar, and I'm one of the advisors here at Apella. You may have seen me at Retiremeet if you've come in the past. I've been here the last 5, 6, maybe 7 Retiremeets. Also, I've done a few webinars as part of our Financial Independence for Women series, so you may have seen me on that. And then as Tom mentioned, I've been asking him all of our awesome listener questions on the podcast recently, so you may have heard me there. But nonetheless, I'm really excited to talk about a really important topic today, as Tom mentioned. This is something that's very dear to me because, quite frankly, like many others, growing up, I didn't really have a lot of guidance in investing or financial advice, personal finance. Actually, my folks, who are amazing, are immigrants, and they started their own business, and they got kind of lucky with real estate, but they really didn't know a thing or two about investing or personal finance. So that's kind of what encouraged me to go out and learn on my own and why I'm in the field in the first place. And also, one of the big reasons of why education in the finance space is so important to me, especially for our younger generation. So that's what we're really going to talk about today. And it's a really important topic in my opinion. It relates to all of your kids, your grandkids, their friends, nieces, nephews, anyone who's kind of entering the world of investing. How can we help them and support them? So we'll keep this short and sweet. We've only got 20 minutes, but if there are questions, we'll have some time at the end to go over them. And I think there's a clicker here. Perfect. So first and foremost, I want to touch on the investment landscape today that our young investors are facing. So whether for good or bad, social media has kind of become the #1 source of information for a lot of young folks. And I actually took a little bit of a survey. So we have in our office a pretty young crowd. Actually, we have quite a few people under the age of 30. And I went around and asked them, what are the top financial topics that you're seeing on your social media feeds? And so I threw some of the answers up on the screen here, and the answers were broad, to say the least. We've got crypto, entrepreneurship, life insurance for investing, real estate investing, and much more. So understandably, our young generation is facing total information overload when they're scrolling through social media and trying to learn about investing and personal finance. So really the goal for today is to talk about how we can help them cut through the noise and encourage smart investing with kind of, academic, evidence-based approach when we're talking about personal finance. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So I have a question for you guys. Does anyone know what Warren Buffett calls the 8th wonder of the world? That's amazing. I asked a few people out there, and nobody knew the answer. So you guys are pretty savvy investors, it sounds like. So we're going to talk about compound growth, essentially. And really, the reason why this is so important is for our younger generation, an extra 5, 10 years starting earlier can make such a massive difference. I have this great chart here up on the screen, and actually, you can find thousands of charts like this that you can share with your loved ones. But I want to point out, most notably, the first line here in purple is our late investor. And this is essentially kind of what we see most of the time. Once you're age 35, you've kind of established your career, you're earning some money, and that's when you really start thinking about retirement. In all the scenarios here, we're talking about investing $200 a month with a 7% annualized rate of return. So our purple investor starts at 35, continues for 30 years until age 65, and they have $242,000 saved at age 65. Now let's compare that to the black line. So the black line shows our early investor. This is somebody who starts at age 25, invests for only 10 years until age 35, and then stops, which is why you'll see that the line is dotted. And so at age 65, that investor actually has $270,000, so more than the late investor. And they actually only invested for 10 years versus our late investor in purple invested for an entire 30 years. And so that's a substantial difference, right? And then of course we have our consistent investor. So you start at age 25 and you continue all the way to age 65, shown in blue. They've got $512,000 at age 65. And just by starting 10 years earlier than the late investor, shown in purple, they have more than double by starting 10 years earlier. So very significant. And I know it's difficult when we're talking to 25-year-olds whose income is not very high and rent is very expensive compared to their income, and their friends want to travel, and it's hard to encourage them to prioritize investing. And so these are some of the things that we can share with them so that they hopefully can be incentivized a little bit to start a little earlier. And also, one of the things too that we're going to talk about is how can we all help them? If they don't have the means at that age, how can we start investing on their behalf? And so we'll talk a little bit more about what kind of ideas we have around that. So essentially what we're really going to focus on today is how can we inspire smart investing in tomorrow's leaders in tangible ways. And so we're going to go through a few ideas that you can take with you. So obviously one way that we can inspire our young loved ones is by helping them with some cash to get started, but not just cash, and actually getting it into some investment vehicles that can really help get the money growing for them sooner rather than later. They might not realize that now, but when they do, they'll be extraordinarily thankful. And so we have 3 different examples, and I kind of took these as anecdotes from my experience with my clients, to be frank, and we split up into 3 categories. So education goals, retirement goals, and general investing. And what type of account you choose to set up for your loved one will kind of depend on what your goals for that beneficiary is. And so we'll start with education. 529 accounts are amazing vehicles that are kind of easy to set and forget. If you want to help somebody with their education goals, you know that the money will likely be used for education expenses so that when you take it out, they're tax-free. It's very easy to set up a beneficiary on one of these accounts and start investing for them. One of my favorite reasons for using the 529 is if you don't want to have to manage it all the time, you can set it in an age-based investment program where it becomes more conservative as the child gets closer to college years. And there's plenty of really great providers out there that you can find low-cost, globally diverse portfolios that you can utilize. Some of the things to consider are if they have siblings, it's a really great tool because even if they don't use all the funds, it can be transferred to another beneficiary. And now, as of the last couple of years with Secure Act and some policy changes, they can even take some funds and move it into Roth IRA accounts. So I have a client in particular who she doesn't need her inherited IRA RMD that she takes each year, and she actually doesn't have kids of her own, but she takes $5,000 and puts it into a 529 for one of her really good friends' kids, for 3 of them. And what a beautiful gift to give to not only her friend, but her, their kids. And then if you do want to encourage your young loved ones to invest for a longer period and for retirement, you can consider a Roth IRA account. And this can be really easy to set up, especially with the help of an advisor. So I have another client in particular who has a niece who's 29 years old. She knows that she has earned income and that she's not above the income limits for contributing to a Roth. And she wanted to give her some cash. She's going to have an estate tax problem down the road, and so she figured, let's start gifting now. And so instead of giving her a check for $5,000 on her 29th birthday, she gave her advisor's card. and said, can you just connect with them, open up a Roth IRA, and I'll fund it for you. And we have a few clients who do that, and I think it's such an amazing gift to give someone, not only because you get the money into this tax-free account that's going to grow until they're age 60, retirement age, but on top of that, you've now connected her with a financial professional that you trust who can go through the IRS rules with her and make sure that it's invested properly. And then lastly, if you're not really sure what to do with the funds, if you're not really sure what the goals are and you just want to start teaching them about investing, or maybe it's a minor and you want to set up an account for them, you can always use a general investing account called a custodial account. This is just like your individual brokerage, your joint accounts. It's after-tax money, and you can set it up in a way where the account holder is actually the minor, and then you're the custodian. So you actually get to manage how the investments are made and what really goes on in the account until they become of age, 18, and then it becomes in their name. So one really fun idea is to do something like $1 a day. So for example, you have kids and they're starting to have their own kids, so you're going to have grandkids on the way. Every time a grandkid comes around, open up a custodial account, and each birthday put $365 in there. And then it's a really great way to actually start a conversation with them as they get older, each birthday, to sit down and show them how it's returned, how the volatility has been. It's a great tool to form a bit of a bond through investing with your young loved ones. So there's a million other ways that you can kind of help the younger generation. These are just a few, I think, really fun examples that I've encountered. And let's say you don't have the means to gift money, or maybe you don't want to gift money. That's totally fine. There's other ways that we can encourage smart investing for our young loved ones, and one of those is just through education. So I encourage you to think about inviting the people that you know, even if they're younger, to things like this or webinars. We put on a lot of webinars on all sorts of topics. It doesn't have to be retirement. Share links with them that you can have. Maybe they'll never click on it, which is fine, but at least they'll have it in their inbox and maybe go back to it at some point in time. Also, I encourage you to share your stories about finance. So whether that's success stories about how you got to where you got, or maybe it's stories of perseverance, right, and lessons that you've learned. I think everybody's talking about money and investing online, so it doesn't have to be as taboo as it once was. We should be able to talk about it in our own homes with the people that we loved. And then, of course, ask. Let's say you have a nephew who just turned 23 and they are starting their career, they got a new job. Ask them about their 401k plan. Are they investing in it? Is there a match? Do they know what the investments are? And it is a good way to kind of bridge that gap and open the conversation. And lastly, but arguably maybe most important, introduce them to a financial professional that you trust. Because there's obviously so many different opinions out there that I think the importance of introducing them to someone who has an academic-based background and an evidence-based approach to investing. For example, this nephew who's starting his career has a 401k. Let's say you ask about it and he's like, I have no idea what the heck that is. Just feel free to introduce them to your advisor. I guarantee you no advisor would be upset by having a 30-minute phone call with somebody in your family or somebody that you know to just talk through the 401k, what it is, what the options are. So really to kind of pull it all together, what I'd love for you to take away from today's session here is, number one, the importance of starting early. If we can encourage them to start early, amazing. But if we are inclined to help them start early, even better. They will be forever thankful. Number two, talk to them so that we can start to teach them how to cut through the noise of social media. There's a lot of information and different opinions out there, so having some voices that they can trust is really important. And lastly, we can kind of do all this through the gift of investments or simple education. Like I said, it doesn't have to be taboo to talk about money, and I think that they'll appreciate your wisdom more than you probably realize. Do we have any questions? Yeah?
Can you talk about acorns?
Acorns. Acorns is a great option to encourage them to at least get started with investing. And in case anybody doesn't know what Acorns is you can set up your bank account and it automatically will open either a retirement account or a brokerage account, and it'll round up your dollar on every transaction that you use with your credit card or your bank card, and then invest that money for you. And I think to start, it's an amazing tool because at least they can log into the account, start to see how it's invested. So I love Acorns.
I have a question about the 529, the college fund.
Yeah.
Is it, I thought it was only parents or grandparents that could open those. Like, I don't have kids, but my friends do. Can I open one for them? And if so, can I defer money from my IRA, I have a 403B, to that to fund it?
Well, you'd still have to take the money out of the 403B, pay the taxes on it, but then, yes, you could funnel it into a 529 and you can list anyone as a beneficiary.
Thank you.
Yes?
The Secure Act, the 529 that you can take later and put 35,000 into a Roth.
Yep.
Is that a one-time deal?
You know, I have to double check. As far as I know, it is a one-time deal, but I'd have to double check and we can get back to you on that. The question was, is it a one-time deal that you can roll over the 35,000 out of a 529?
You have to have earned income in those years, so you can only do like 7,000, 7,000. Pardon me, yeah. Move the money from the 529 to the Roth, the recipient has to have earned income those years, and then you can only move it in up to the maximum each year in those tax years. So it's, I think, under the age of 50, it's still 7,000.
Yeah.
So I think it's a wonderful, by the way, wonderful way. Go ahead, you had another question.
Oh, go ahead.
On 529, a lot of the schools in the States will send you free to a 2-year college, and the kid is still, has the 529 money. If they decide only to go the AA degree route, what can they do with that 529 money?
Yeah,
So the question is, if you don't spend 529 money, what can you do with it?
yeah.
Las Vegas. And
Yeah.
I suggest going with considering the weekend red. That's not who I'm supporting, but just to kind of in keeping with the theme of things.
Yeah, some option. I mean, we talked about it. You can roll some of it into a Roth IRA, and then if there's other beneficiaries, siblings, for example, usually you can change the beneficiary. And you'd have to go through, there's specific rules about what is tax-free in terms of education expenses, so I would just get familiar with what those are, and otherwise you'll be paying taxes.
If you have more questions, Roxy's going to be right outside. Let's give her a big hand. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming up and doing this.